Thank you for joining me for another quick hits conversation. I'm Dr. Robyn, aka Mental MacGyver. I provide luxury level high performance support and coaching to executives, founders, celebrities, and athletes. With me today, I have Todd Karges. He has a background in project management and building agile development mindsets. He is a transformation and change management practitioner, a leadership development coach, and is based outside of Toronto. I have Glady Baradaran. She has 15 years of HR experience and a love for organizational development. She is also in Canada. And I have Dave Roberts. He's a teacher, co-author of the book When the Psychology Professor Met the Minister, and a bereavement support specialist. He is here in the US. The question I have today, what if you don't have friends at work? Dave, what do you think?
When you posed this question this week and when we talked about it at our last panel discussion, I started doing some thinking. And I think it's great to have friends at work, but if not, what if it's just okay to be friendly and collegial and cooperative? Because if we can show those kind of characteristics that we would normally display when we wanted to establish a relationship, why can't we just do that at work, establish collegial relationship? And perhaps what that could lead to is other opportunities for growth. The supervisor might recognize that, might ask me to, or that person to participate in a project, be up for a specific promotion, and then friendship can come from there. The other thing that I was thinking about too, and I get the research that says having a friend at work makes you more engaged, makes you more vested in the mission. But what if a person goes into the workplace with the first priority of establishing friendships rather than being colleagues first? Then I believe that person needs to take a deep look within themselves and ask why they're so vested in the friendship piece before they get oriented and acclimated to the work environment.
That's why the role of if we talk about work, the role of the leaders comes in there. What is the role of the manager in friendship of the employee, establishing it, how to do it? So as Dave was saying, you can have a project, make them work together, and the friendship builds on that. Again, we have different type of friendship, different level of friendship we're talking about in a work environment. But for sure, it's the role of the organization and the manager to find a way to make people to work together well in collaboration, friendly as colleagues, and help them have places and situations that can build the friendship from there. So I truly believe that it has to be in the hands of the organization to be done well. Unless people, they just get together and make bubbles and friendships and these groups, and they can go against the culture of organization or against and just hangs around and do nothing because they just want to hang around and be friends.
I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense, Glady. If an organization wants to, and this is going to sound wrong when I say it this way, but if an organization wants to take advantage of the benefits that friendships at work can have, then I think that it's absolutely true that they need to be intentional. However, when I think of what if I don't have friends at work, the thing that immediately comes to my mind is like, well, who am I showing up as if I don't have friends at work? And I've certainly worked with people who didn't have any friends at work, and with almost without exception, they just weren't open to friendship. I mean, I'm also open to the possibility that maybe they just didn't like me and they were terrible with me, but although of course not, because I'm delightful. Who do I need to be, or who would I be showing up as if I was completely closed down to the possibility of friendship at work? So that's why, like, even when we started this conversation, the question just made me sad.
I do feel like, though, there's something with what Dave said about showing up and just being friendly and not having friends at work. And here's what I mean. I've been in situations where I've shown up at work and I've been friendly and I've been that colleague and I've been that go-to person. And I realized everybody was dumping everything on me. I was doing all of the work. And they weren't my friends. They were just taking advantage of the fact that I was friendly. So I didn't have friends at work while being friendly, if that makes sense.
Wow, I hadn't considered that. But yeah, that's a really interesting take on it too. And what's connecting for me as you say that, Robyn, is that that's a situation where an organized take advantage of friendliness rather than friendship.
Where they can mistake your kindness for weakness and take advantage of it.
And this is where you play your role as a human. When you go to an organization, you have to have your boundaries. You have to be able to say no as hard as it is. And you have to set up your values and be collaborative, friendly, and open, and at the same time not let yourself to fall into that negative cycle or be taken advantage of. But I still say there's much more to have friends is more important, and I would push for it. If I was leading a team, I would make sure that there's building some sort of doing extra activity outside of work to build this relationship between them, because it makes them happier.
So if we go back to the main question, what if you don't have friends at work? Is that something that we are saying to people, you should strive to find someone that you can at least have a friendly relationship, a trusting relationship with?
My gut tells me yes, because you know what? We spend so much time at work, and you're not always going to be able to talk to your manager or someone in a position of authority or in HR or whatever. And we're human beings, and things happen. Like there's crises. I get mad at something that's happened or whatever. And just having someone to kind of talk to about that, it's almost like, oh, if I didn't have that, I'm sure that I'd be less effective in my jobs.
And I would be less likely to be engaged in the mission if I didn't have somebody I could at least confide in. Like when I worked for the state, I had a brilliant supervisor who mentored me whenever things were getting really, really tough. I would sit down and we would talk, and he would give me some suggestions. And I mean, eventually we did become friendly, but yeah, we also knew the boundaries. We knew that business was business and friendship was friendship. And we were able to establish that. And that's also important too, particularly if you do establish friendships at work. Let's say one of the friends gets promoted and the other one doesn't. That could cause a rift in the relationship. So these are things to kind of like talk about before I think you get to a friendship relationship with a work colleague. What if this happens? What if that happens? How are we going to handle it?
I'm thinking back to when I was a project manager, and one of the things that I used to recognize happen with the project teams is sometimes the project team would all go out for a beer after work, and sometimes they'd invite me, and that's fantastic. And sometimes they'd all go out for a beer and they wouldn't invite me. And those were the times that I knew that I was going to be the topic of conversation. And that's okay.
There's something too about the virtual world. Like, how do you create these friendships when you're working from home? What does that look like?
For me, for the last 2.5 years, 3 years that I'm working more from home, is having team members that are around the world is really trying to bring them a little bit of who Glady is. Like just a story of me, like not overburden them. I always say, hey, do you want to see a picture of my son's graduation? I ask them first. I just don't bombard them. I make a point to bring part of myself in there, my values, who I am. And I would open up and say, hey, tell me about yourself. What did you do? What do you like to do? So slowly you start building those bonds. It's harder though, because when you see somebody in person, you just start clicking all those social cues and body language. It's a bit harder, but it's an effort that I truly say it has to be made.
So you're very purposeful about it, it sounds like, Glady. Dave, what about you in the virtual world? No, go ahead, Todd.
I was going to say, it still just makes me really, really sad to think of not having friends.
I can only speak from the perspective of having to do hybrid learning as an educator. And I really felt a strong disconnect with my students. A lot of times you're talking about a blank screen, and they have great intentions in terms of keeping their video on, but if they're working from home, they got dogs barking, they got other stuff going on. They don't want to lend you into that. So I think over long term, to develop any type of really meaningful relationship virtually, it'd be really, really difficult for me to do that.
I think there has to be an excuse to get together. So Quick Hits does that for me. There are people like the three of you who come in here and you do these on a consistent basis. So I'll see you every couple of weeks or once a month or whatever. And we get to chat before and after the recording. And that purposeful, like this happens, creates a connection. Whereas people who come in and they may do one or they'll do two, I don't have that same friendship connection with them because I don't have a reason to see them, and without it, nothing develops.
I maybe say a trick I use when people have the cameras on and we're on a call. I make a point to go through the pictures. I'm like, oh, somebody's wearing new glasses, or they cut their hair. Private message, hey, you cut your hair. Oh, you noticed, because you do that when you're in a people thing, when you're all together in person. Why not to do it behind? So I really purposefully have tricks to keep in touch. With this group of people.
I think developing friendships is a purposeful thing at work or otherwise. I think that's what we're learning. So that is our 10 minutes. I think what we've come to is friends at work are important. So thank you for
Yes.
having this conversation with me, and thank you for being my friends at work. And I look forward to speaking to each of you again very soon.